Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you on Friday. It's the weekend, or it's very nearly the weekend. Might be the weekend by the time you're watching this video, so I hope it all goes well and you can enjoy yourself before Sunday's big game at Newcastle. Mikel Arteta has been speaking just now at his press conference ahead of that game, so I thought I'd pop on, have a look at what he had to say, look at the latest team news, discuss that game a little bit, and any other Arsenal business that is doing the rounds. So we'll start with what Mikel had to say today at his press conference, and the big news, really, the big sort of talking point ahead of the game is what is going on with the Arsenal centre-backs. Will Gabriel be fit? What's the latest for William Saliba? And this is what Mikel had to say. Obviously on Gabriel, he limped off in the second half of the win against Chelsea in midweek, so they've got that collision with Aaron Ramsdale, really, in the when Chelsea scored the third goal, when they kind of collided as a Chelsea guy went through and scored. Tried to carry on a couple of times, sort of went down again and eventually got taken off. Rob Holding came on for the last 10 minutes or so, and Mikel's basically, it's going to be a late fitness test. We're going to find out tomorrow. Arsenal find out tomorrow. So they've got their final training session tomorrow in the morning before they travel up to Newcastle and stay overnight at a hotel. And after that training session tomorrow, that's when Arsenal will make a decision on Gabriel. He said, we'll see tomorrow how he is. He could not finish the game, so obviously that was a big sign for us. We will have to see. Now, Arsenal are going to have their fingers crossed that he is all right. I spoke about it in yesterday's video. The good thing on this injury is it didn't appear to be anything sort of, ligament or muscle related, anything like that. It was a bit of an impact injury. And if that is the case, then, Arsenal will be hopefully getting him patched up in time to be able to feature. I think it's very important that he does feature. And he was limping after the game on Tuesday night, but he came out on the pitch. He was laughing around. He was joking around with Mudryk and with Zinchenko. And he didn't give the impression of a player who was worried about potentially missing the next game. So I thought that was quite a good sign. But again, that's me just kind of putting two and two together from what I'm seeing on television pictures. But they will see tomorrow. They'll find out tomorrow. But fingers crossed, he will be all right. And I think that'll be really important because on Saliba, he's not playing. Mikel Arteta has ruled him out once again. He delivered his latest update. He said not a lot of progress. He's feeling better every single day. He's not been able to have any activity around the team, though, so we don't expect him to be with us. He was then pushed on the fact on whether this was time just to say, look, he's not going to play again this season. He's out, 4 games to go. He's not going to be ready. We're just going to get him ready for the summer, make sure he's fine for pre-season and ready for next season. And Mikel said, we are not there yet because we are always hopeful and the player's always pushing to play. If that's the case, then we will announce it, but hopefully that won't be the case. I've spoken about this before. I kind of feel like I think we'll know more. If Arsenal lose against Newcastle or even drop points against Newcastle and Manchester City win, I mean, that will be that in terms of the title race. And I think once that happens, then you basically just think, no matter what happens between now and the end of the season, we'll just give Saliba the time off, make sure he's back fit for the summer. But if Arsenal are still in with a chance of winning this title, when if Saliba can get back fit and play the last 2 games, then they're probably going to try and get him to do that. So we'll wait and see. He was asked, what is it? Is it just about rest, or is there anything else Arsenal need to do to try and get Saliba fit? And he just said it's about the healing process, pain-wise, and the things he can do now off the pitch. He's in a good place, but obviously we have to build that capacity again to have the right impact, the right load for him to be in a good position to train and play for the team. And that's the key thing with Saliba and an injury like this. He can be fine off the pitch, like Mikel's sort of indicating there. He can be pain-free, walking around looking fine, but it's very different in terms of being able to do that than being able to go out and perform in a Premier League match. Because the level's so high, the demands are so high, you just put your body through so much, especially your lower back, all that has to absorb. If you're a centre-back, jumping, winning headers, the physical battle with forwards, if you've got any sort of issue in your back, it's really, really difficult to do that. So that's the challenge Arsenal face with Saliba. That's what they're trying to put right and to give him any sort of chance of playing between now and the end of the season. But personally, for me, I think it's looking unlikely. And I think most of you probably agree with that as well. If the two of them do miss out, if there is no Gabriel and there definitely is no Saliba, then Arsenal are going to be playing Kivior and Rob Holding at Newcastle at St James's Park. That's a little bit worrying. I thought Kivior was good against Chelsea. Absolutely. I thought he did a really good job on his first start, given he would have known he'd be under pressure going into that game, that people were going to be watching him. Chelsea were rubbish. They didn't really put him under much pressure, but what he did do, he did very well. It's going to be a completely different game at Newcastle. I spoke about it in yesterday's video. The challenges that he would face, or he's going to face, because I think he plays whatever happens, because even if if Gabriel's fit, I think he plays next to Gabriel. So he's going to face a very, very different challenge. So much, a real physical battle. Eddie Howe was talking in his press conference today, and he was asked, "Are you tempted?" Because he's not done this yet. He was like, "Are you tempted to play Isaac and Callum Wilson together rather than just play one of them and bring the other one on in the second half?" And he said, "When you're analysing the next game, you have to analyse the opponents yourselves and pick the best team to try and win the game. That won't be any different this weekend. I've talked lots about different scenarios, but ultimately my end decision has to be what does the team need rather than what Callum or Alex need. It's up to me to make the right call." I do wonder if Eddie Howe will be looking at this game, especially with Arsenal's potential issues at centre-back, and think, could this be the day to play Isaac and Wilson together, go really direct, really long, bombard them into the box and see what happens. Even if it's just one of them, it's still going to be a real difficult game for the Arsenal centre-backs. And if it ends up being Kiwior and Holding together, that is definitely a bit, well, it's not a bit of a worry, it's a big worry, because we've seen how much Holding has struggled recently. And for Kiwior, although he played well against Chelsea, this will be a whole different ball game for him on Sunday, in the intensity of St James's Park, the way they play. And it's not just those two either, it's Joe Linton, who's coming in off the left, the size that he is, Bruno Guimaraes. It's just, they've got so many big physical players, and the way they play with Kieran Trippier getting down the flanks and swinging balls in, and the set pieces he delivers. We saw how much Arsenal struggled against it at the end of last season in that game that they lost right at the end, which cost them the Champions League position, and it's going to be more of the same this time around. And so, yeah, Kiwior and Holding, that would be a worry, I have to say, but fingers crossed at least Gabriel can play, and can have pretty much the same defensive backline that Arsenal had against Chelsea on Tuesday night. Mikel was asked if there was anyone else who was suffering any injury doubts ahead of the game, and he said hopefully not. Even if they were, I don't think he'd have. He's not going to suddenly throw a name out there and give Newcastle an idea that a player might potentially be missing. But fingers crossed that is the case, and there's no one else other than the injured players that we know about who are in danger of missing the game. He was asked about the Newcastle game at the end of last season and what sort of impact that would have on Arsenal. He was asked, would you be able to use that as a sort of bit of revenge almost for what happened last season? He said, no, I don't think so. He said that a lot in today's press conference. He didn't want to give much away with any sort of answers. He's very good at that, Arteta. If he doesn't really want to talk, he doesn't want to give the press anything to be able to write headlines about, he doesn't do it. And it was one of those days that it just felt like he batted away every single question and did his very best to ensure there wasn't a single news line to come from the press conference. He said it's a very different game, different players, we'll have to play much better, that's for sure, and we know it's going to be tough. He was asked about Manchester City and the run that they're on, and the fact that everyone just believes they're going to win every single game now before the end of the season. He was asked if he just believed that as well, and again he was like, I don't know. If they do that, they deserve to win the title. If they don't, then we need to be in a position to make sure we put pressure on them. And he's right. And that's the really important thing for Arsenal this weekend, is to, if they can get a win, it's going to be difficult. I think the next two games are so tough for Arsenal. Brighton were brilliant against Man United in that second half yesterday, deservedly won the game. They're playing so well. The next two games are going to be really difficult for Arsenal, Newcastle and then Brighton. If they can come through those with 6 points, then they deserve a massive amount of credit, because they're two really, really difficult fixtures. But let me know what you guys think in terms of anything I've said so far in this video. Who should start, who Mikel should turn to at centre-back. Anything you want to say, let me know in the comments below. Okay, quickly, let's just move on to non-Newcastle matters. Kieran Tierney, it's kind of Newcastle matter actually, because Newcastle are one of the clubs who are in for Kieran Tierney. But Sam Dean at the Telegraph, fantastic Arsenal reporter over at the Telegraph. If you don't follow him, then please do go and do it on social media, because he's well worth a follow. Really good at his job in terms of breaking stories, but analysing games and features, all that sort of stuff. Well worth a follow. But anyway, he wrote a story yesterday about Aston Villa and their summer plans. Dusan Vlahovic on the list, apparently, Sam says. Someone else as well, who I've forgotten who the other big name was, but the third player was Kieran Tierney. Of course, Unai Emery was the manager in charge when Arsenal signed Kieran Tierney, played him a lot when he was fit, when he was in charge at Arsenal. And yeah, Unai apparently wants to take Kieran Tierney to Aston Villa this summer, along with Dusan Vlahovic. Oh, Ferran Torres was the other player who Arsenal have looked at in the past, in fact. So yeah, interesting and good for Arsenal if you've got more than one player involved in the race for Kieran Tierney this summer. If the club do agree to let him leave, which we kind of expect they probably will do, if you've got more than just Newcastle in the running, it's good for Arsenal. Drives the price up, and potentially if you've got a club like Newcastle in the running and there's another club involved, then you can go to Newcastle, who we know have got plenty of money, and say, look, this is what they're offering. You're going to match that or offer more than that, and you would expect Newcastle might say yes, we will. And flex that financial muscle that they have. And I've spoken a lot about Kieran Tierney in previous videos and the decision to potentially let him go this summer. I can understand it, especially if the player's really, really pushing for it. But it is a bit of a gamble when you're going into your first season back in the Champions League, because you're basically going to weaken your squad. Because I don't see how Arsenal go out and get a better left back than Kieran Tierney as backup for Alexander Zinchenko. And so, I just think they're probably going to weaken their squad, because whoever they get is probably going to end up being a young player, because they're going to come in and know that Zinchenko's, pretty much going to be first choice. And so you're not going to get another real sort of experienced top player to come in and sit on the bench. So you're probably going to have to go young and almost make it a bit of a project signing and that. And so I think that weakens the squad. So it's a big call for Arsenal to make, but ultimately, they do have to sell a few players this summer. They've got to start getting some cash in. Tierney's a sellable asset. He's not really playing. He's probably going to want to move. So it does make sense in those sort of regards in terms of selling him. But it'll be interesting to see what Mikel does and what Edu decides and who offers what for Kieran Tierney in the summer. Reiss Nelson looks like he's still not agreed to a new Arsenal contract. There is one on the table. I think Fabrizio Romano yesterday said that Reiss had rejected that contract offer. So we'll wait and see him. And whenever we've spoken to Reiss, certainly after games down in the mix zone, he's always absolutely made it clear he wants to stay at Arsenal. But I suppose you'd want to stay, but you want to stay on decent terms. Arsenal aren't offering you terms to sort of convince you to stay, especially when you know you're going to be a bit part player. Then you're not definitely going to say yes. And there's going to be plenty of interest in Reiss. I think he's done really well for himself this season. He's always making an impact now when he comes off the bench. Brighton are believed to be, heavily interested in Reiss Nelson, and Brighton are a very attractive club right now. There'll be others as well, potentially from abroad. We know he did well when he went to Germany and had that loan spell before he came back to Arsenal. So some big decisions for for Reiss to make. He's the one who's got all the power now. He's going to have Arsenal putting a contract offer under his nose. He's going to have other clubs putting contract not offers under his nose, and he's going to have to weigh up the decision at the end of the season and make a final call on it. And it'll be interesting to see what he makes on this one. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think Arsenal should get Reiss Nelson to stay, or do you think if he's not accepting what they're offering, then that's it? Don't go back with a counter offer and just let him leave on a free. Let me know in the comments. But I do think it'd be a shame to leave Reiss Nelson and leave on a free. I don't really mind him going, but it's just a shame after investing all that money in his development, having him for so long, to then lose him on a free. It just seems like a bit of a shame to me, but that's just me talking. Anyway, that's it from me. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Please do enjoy the start of your weekend. I'll try and do a video tomorrow looking more extensively at that Newcastle game. We'll go through our predicted 11, do the usual stuff like that. So until then, have a very good day, everyone. I'll speak to you soon.